In the crypto space, fear continues to prevail, only 26. Bitcoin dominance is rising slightly. Altcoin season is still a long way off, and Bitcoin is rising, Kaspa is down, XRP is slightly up, and Internet Computer is down just a bit. What is the current status right now? As always, we're going through the entire dashboard based on data. I'll analyze the market for you, and of course the chart analysis again for Kaspa, XRP, Supra, and many other altcoins, as well as Bitcoin. Hi, I'm Marius from 10x Analytics, and my channel is all about data and not about hype. I categorize cryptocurrencies, but also stocks based on data, and ultimately go through all the data really with you now. But first, let's look at the macro data so that you can understand the entire market and where we actually are. I share this every Sunday. I do a market update with all the info, including chart analyses. If you don't want to miss that, then please subscribe to my channel now so you don't miss any more analyses, on the one hand, but also news updates on altcoins, cryptos, and also stocks. And all of it is data-based. But let's start directly with the overall market. It's currently bearish, especially in the crypto sector, of course. It's also simply related to the fact that inflation continues to be, let's say, very persistent, and that's always, I'd say, a sign for risk assets, which is negative, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's go through everything once again. Fear and greed, negative. We're at 26 fear. There's a lot of fear in the market. Altcoin season 35, meaning more of a Bitcoin season. For altcoins, that's rather bearish. Bitcoin dominance is at 56.3, generally also classified as rather bearish for altcoins because it's still too high. Crypto market cap about the same as last week, rather neutral. Then we move on to the funding rates and the derivatives as a whole, which are rather neutral. Open interest is currently bearish, minus 2.1% in the last 24 hours. And liquidations in 24 hours, we have 60 million longs were liquidated and 35 million shorts. Generally though, that's also a bearish sign. Then we come to the liquidity. Extremely important, of course, especially for risk assets, is liquidity. The Bitcoin ETF flows are more in the neutral range. We had minus 16 million, which isn't that much. So in the last 7 days, it's a rather neutral range. Exchange flows bullish because many Bitcoins were withdrawn from exchanges, from crypto exchanges, for example, which suggests that they are hodlers, so to speak, who don't want to sell their Bitcoin. Stablecoin liquidity is also bullish, and the M2 money supply liquidity, which is the total liquidity, is currently more in the neutral range. Then the macro winds are bearish overall. The DXY is at about 0.5%, slightly in the green, but otherwise things are generally in the bearish range. The Fed, the Central Bank of America, is also still rather bearish for risk assets here. Interest rates remain the same. Next meeting is July 29th. And there is still a 70% consensus that everything will stay the same. Then let's look at the catalysts, the US inflation data on July 14th. Then the FOMC meeting, that is, from the Federal Reserve, from the central bank, on July 29th. On August 7th, the deadline for the Clarity Act in America. And Bitcoin options on July 25th. They will finally arrive, or rather expire, which can also trigger volatility. So all in all, still bearish. We are still in a bear market, so nothing new there. But now let's go straight back into the chart analysis together. Yes, and here we are in the chart analysis. As always, we'll start by looking at Bitcoin. Let's take another look at the overall context. If you look at this, you can actually see the cycles quite clearly. Here we had the last, let's say, bull market. That was the previous bull market, bear market. Now we are back here in the bear market. I've done this several times in my videos in the last bear markets. There, for example, it was 76% in the red. It was always around 80%, let's say, depending on the situation. In the beginning, the volatility was of course much higher. That has now decreased. And currently, in the present bear market, we are at just 53%. So the chance that it could go down even further into the 40,000 range is definitely realistic and possible. Therefore, generally speaking, if you look at it, we still have room to move downwards here. This always indicates that up here we are more in the overbought area, meaning when many people buy and the hypes come. And down here it's more in the oversold area when many people see crypto as dead. then we are in the oversold range. Generally, this is more of a bearish zone, and this is a bullish zone. And down here, it will definitely get exciting in these areas if a large green dot forms here again. Especially on the weekly chart, that is of course a positive sign. But let's go to the daily chart, which I generally use more often. We had a counter movement upwards here, let's say, after the 10x indicator formed a small green dot, almost 12% so far. So quite decent. But now we are slowly entering the overbought zone, as you can see once again. It's getting risky here now. It could be that we'll rise a bit more here. And then, because if a big red dot forms or a small red dot, it'll be sold off here. And that it might then go down further. Here, I definitely keep an eye on the 10x indicator for now, as soon as a small red dot appears or even a big red dot appears. So if we get up here, overbought zone, then it gets dangerous. Then you definitely have to be careful because the risk of correction is very high. Yeah, that's also the point I'm currently waiting for with Bitcoin. As I said, I have several data points. On the one hand, of course, the stock market. I've already mentioned that in several videos. If we take a look at that, stocks are at an all-time high here. There hasn't been an extremely large correction yet. It was only up to 5%. Normally, if there's really a correction, a big one, we're more down here, you know, in the 25-30 range. And if that happens in the stock market, then Bitcoin will naturally be pulled down too. That's one of the indicators. Then, as already mentioned, that in all bear markets, there was actually at least a 70-80% drawdown from the all-time high, and generally also from the indicator that we're slowly entering the overbought zone here. All signs really that it's going to go down significantly further. My range is definitely, this is where it gets exciting for me, from about this range here, 40,000 range. Exactly, let's just make sure everything is correct here. So, then let's move on to the altcoins. Let's look at Ethereum as always. It's actually performed similarly to Bitcoin. There aren't any big differences there. Maybe quite exciting. We had a small green dot here, another bullish trend reversal. But there seems to be a strong resistance line here. There too, we're almost up here now, slowly in the overbought zone. So from my point of view, there's downside potential here too. Solana. Solana was actually exciting because we had a big green dot here. That meant a possible bottoming out. And it actually was. From then on, Solana rose by about 35%. But now a big red dot. Possible downward trend now, and above all, a possible local top formation. Which is what happened. You know, the point has arrived here. Boom. And we're already down 10%. In other words, the downside potential is still huge here too. But as I said, that's also naturally linked to the overall market and Bitcoin. Let's look at Kaspa. Kaspa had a little push here. You know, the indicator showed a small green dot. After that, we also pushed upwards by almost 16%. But now a small red dot, danger again. And we went down. Here too, the downside potential is still huge. I'll post, of course, as soon as something happens here, so to speak. For example, a big red dot, a big green dot, for example. I post that in my 10x Insider group, where I regularly do chart analyses. Feel free to follow there. I'm doing chart analyses there now, also for Kaspa, for Bitcoin, but also for XRP, for example, so that you really stay up to date. All the info here, just scan the code, then you'll get to my website, or all the info is also in the video description. Then internet computer. There too, a small red dot. Bearish trend reversal. The chance that it's going down is now given again. There's not much news there at the moment either, except that the potential for a downward move is naturally there too. Then Supra. Supra is really, as you can see, here was the big red dot, so a possible top formation, and after that it actually kept going down. We had another small push upwards here, well, about 30%. Small is just because it's a low cap, exactly. But now here's the sell-off again. Red, small red dot, possible bearish trend reversal. And it continues downwards. By the way, I recently made a video about Supra, about the latest updates. So if you're a Supra holder, an extremely important video for you, I'll link it for you up here. Then XRP. XRP had a small green dot here, then we pushed upwards. And now a small red dot. it's going down. Actually a similar situation to many altcoins, there's nothing special here now. I also made an important video about XRP recently. If I were you, if you're an XRP holder now for example, I wouldn't want to miss it, I'll link it for you up here. Then let's look further. SUI for example, also an extremely exciting project. But here too, nothing new in terms of the chart, it actually looks similar to the others. There's actually nothing to say at the moment. Then Cardano had a massive sell-off, and here actually 2 big green dots. So a possible bottom formation. After that we also went up, so a local bottom formation if you look at it here. Almost 40%, quite a blatant, decent increase. After that, a small red dot formed here, a possible bearish trend reversal. And we also went down. Here again we are now in the middle zone. Down here it remains exciting for me. I also made a video about Cardano recently, an extremely important video. I'll link it for you up here. That's all for now regarding the chart analyses. At the moment, not much is actually changing, but as I said, if you want to stay up to date, then follow me here on YouTube. I do regular updates there. Chart analyses, as I said, always a news update on Sunday, but also updates on individual altcoins, Kaspa, XRP, Supra, and otherwise I also introduce new altcoins, new stocks, especially when the bull market returns that I have on my radar and have really, let's say, found in my research. So feel free to subscribe to the channel. And now I'm linking a video here that I made recently, also an extremely exciting topic. I'll link it for you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a bit.